Awesome. Okay, well, hi everyone. My name is Megan McDonald. I work as sommelier and client concierge for IronGate Wine and IronGateAuctions. I wanted to extend a big thank you for taking some time out of your Sunday to join us. We're excited to host Francois Audouze, who is with us in Paris. Before I make any introductions, I am going to go through some brief housekeeping items. Everyone will remain muted for the entirety of the call. We have about 200 participants, so things might get a little noisy. And to that note, because of the level of attendees, we're only going to be talking about the questions that were submitted ahead of time. Francois is joining us in Paris, and it's 8 p.m. there, so we're going to try to keep it as concise as possible. Last note, we are going to be recording this session, so if anyone is late or can't make it for any reason, we will be distributing the video after the fact for you to watch. All right, so without further ado, I want to give an introduction to Francois Audouze. I'm pretty sure that everyone has a good idea of who he is, but he is a former industrialist who turned wine aficionado. He started collecting in 1970, which I think is when Burgundy was actually affordable. He's since accrued a cellar of about 40,000 bottles, about a quarter being over 60 years old, which is incredible. He's tasted 174 vintages and has recorded over 14,000 bottles through his blog and through social media. Mainly those from his dinners, which I'll tell you a little bit more about later through his company, Académie des Vins Anciens. So I'm going to hand it over to Warren now, who's going to introduce our base to Francois.
Thank you, Megan, very much. I'm really excited about this. Francois, I'm going to let you know the people that we have on here. And by the way, again, a happy belated birthday. Francois turned 78 years young on Friday, and on his last Instagram post, you can see the amazing wines that he enjoyed. Francois, we have a fairly wide and varied base of collectors here for you this afternoon and listeners. The majority of the people online are from Canada, from our Canadian base of people who participate in our auctions, but we also have friends from the United States and Europe as well. A number of our clients in Hong Kong have asked us to record this as it's 2 o'clock in the morning there. But they constitute a wide range of enthusiasts, primarily private collectors, but we also have students of wine and those who work in the wine industry and service private collectors. So I'm honored that you've given us your time here this afternoon. And I'm going to bounce it back over to Megan, who's going to kind of start. We're going to do a kind of an interview style of questions here, but what we have done is we have categorized them into things such as wine collecting and storage. We're going to talk a little bit about modern wine, old wine, and then I'm going to leave the most interesting thing to me until the end, which is your slow oxygenation method, and we'll talk about that. Okay, so I will. So thank you again for coming, and I'm going to move it over to Megan.
Thank you to receiving me. Thank you.
Okay, Francois. So I'll put you in the hot seat here. I'm going to start out with some questions on your history of wine collecting and sourcing wine overall. We did have a question from a client, Tom, who was wondering, how have you found the treasures in your cellar, and how could you advise our clients on trying to find some of those?
So, thank you for the question. When I began collecting, it is because I had bought a house which had a cellar. So a cellar had not to stay empty. So I decided to buy wine. But I did not know a lot about wine. And as many people, I began a cellar with Bordeaux, because Bordeaux, there is a classification. And so you know exactly if it is a fifth growth, you know that it is less than its second growth, and so on. So I began, and my method was to buy a lot of wine, to put them together in a dinner. And if one pleases me, I go in the direction of this wine. So it was a practical step by step, you know, by trying wine and loving wine. And my first years was very normal and common. But one day I had a shock, a big shock by going in a tasting, and I was served blind a wine that had a taste that I never had. And I nearly fell off my chair, you know, and it was a Clémence Barsac, 1923. And I realized that my future should be in old wines. And we have the chance in France that there are many cellars, many bottles available that are not available in other countries, for probably Italy, but largely less. And so I could buy in auction, and there was a lot of bottles. And as you said at the beginning, saying when Burgundy were available, I have lived in a period in which people thought that Burgundy do not age. So I bought the 1915, 1918, that nobody cared to look at. So I paid incredibly low prices because they were available and I knew that they were good.
Right. That's so funny that you say that, because oftentimes you'll meet wine collectors who have, you know, an aha moment in wine, and it sounds like that's what you had with the 1923 Chateau Clémence. I do have another question from Rob, and from your perspective, how do you go about purchasing wine, and especially old wine? How can you look at a bottle before buying it and know that it's still going to be okay to drink, that it's going to be available?
Yeah, you know, you must try, because it is experience which helps. So if I've bought so many bottles that I have now an experience. My suggestion, if you want to enter in the world of old wines, begin by low-priced wines. And what I suggest, begin with sweet wines, because sweet wines will ever be good. So if you have, for example, some Montbazillac, Cadillac, Loupiac, cheap variety, you see, but you buy a 1925 or 1934, and you will have a wine which is always good. And it will form your palate on such wines. And then progressively, you will enter the world of red wines. White wines, it's complicated, but red wines go slowly and go decade by decade, by 70s, then by 60s, and by 50s, and your palate will understand more and more, and you will be more and more experienced in buying a good wines. But you must make tries.
Right.
If you are afraid, you will never go on in collecting and drinking old wines.
That's
you
right.
must many tries.
Kind of like big risk, big reward, right? Right. So I'm going to move on to more of wine storage. Part of our business here is a wine cellarage, but we work with a lot of people with private cellars. And our client Ron had a question about storing particularly champagne, but also I think I'd like to use it as a blanket for vintage wine and large format wines. A lot of times I find them in cellars standing vertically as opposed to selling them on their side. What's your opinion?
So for storing, you know, you have two way of managing a cellar. One is you want to show it and to make it very blah, 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 representative, or one is just to store wine. My cellar is made to store wine, not to show, not to impress people. So practical, something practical. What is vertical is only alcohol and also ports or Madeira, vertical. The rest is horizontal. All the wines are horizontal. And if you talk about big formats, in your room you must have a place where you can put the big formats, because they are terrible to store. It's very difficult, and you have the same problem with the form of the bottles of champagne. There are so many forms of bottles of champagne that you must have space to put them, because normally they don't adjust always when you store them.
Yeah,
Francois, I'm sorry to interrupt. I was going to ask, what are you keeping your cellar at temperature and humidity wise?
So I keep my cellar at 15 Celsius.
Okay.
Yeah. So I don't read the question. I've seen a question, why ports vertical? They could be horizontal. I have chosen to put them vertical, and it works. It works, so I have no problem.
Right. Well, I guess that makes sense with vintage port as well, because
they can be horizontal or vertical. I chose to make them vertical.
Okay.
And what we'll probably do is we're going to, and I hadn't turned the chat off at the beginning, but we'll leave the chat to the side because it can take us off topic. And so you can ignore the chat on the side and we'll help to answer those for people. I'll take care of that, Francois. Go ahead, Megan, sorry.
No, that's fine. I do have one more question with regard to wine storage. I wanted your thoughts on aged or vintage bottles that have been topped up and recorked, whether that be function.
No, so I have a philosophy. Okay. Never recork and never buy recorked bottles. So if in your cellar you have a bottle which has lost some volume, the idea comes, I would like that it is recorked. Now more and more the domains, the chateaux, they don't want to recork. And if you buy a recorked bottle, you never know what was inside the bottle. You never know what was the level. For example, if you have a box of 6 Mouton 1945, let's say so, let us dream, and all the levels are perfect. But these 6 bottles were made with 8 bottles. So you have in this group bottles in which the level was much too low. So if you don't have any justification of the level before, don't buy recorked bottles. And I must tell you, a bottle with original cork is 10 times better than a recorked bottle, except in some cellars like the cellar of Bouchard, which is a perfect cellar. So for example, my best ever Yquem is a Yquem 1861, which by miracle had its original cork. It was tiny, but it had kept the wine, and it is my best ever Yquem, 1861, with original cork. That happens not often to find such bottles. But generally speaking, don't buy a recorked bottle, and don't let the bottles be recorked. Because if you let it be recorked, there will be a travel, an operation in the domain, and then they travel back to your, it's better that you drink it.
Okay, perfect, thank you. I will move on to some questions now about modern wine or modern winemaking. The first question is with regard to modern winemaking. Innovations like temperature control in the winery and extensive use of new French barrels can be used to make wines that are a little bit more approachable in their use.
Yes, but
the question from our client is, how do you feel that affects the wine both qualitatively and also for its longevity?
So your question is very important because it comes to my philosophy about wine. I'm often asked, do the winemakers of today are as clever as the winemakers of 1 century ago? Because now, when you drink a Lafite 1900, it is 10 times better than a Lafite 2010. 10 times better. So does it mean that the winemakers of that time were better? No, no, no. Our winemakers of today work as well or even better than the winemakers of that time. But what makes a good wine? It is age. So when I drink a Lafite 1900, it is 10 times better than a wine of today. A Latour 28 is 10 times better than the wine of today, but it is due to age. So the winemaker at that time worked well, and the winemaker of today works well.
Right.
What makes the difference is the power of age. And I will talk about that when you ask me, because I have an idea. You know that Robert Parker has killed the notion of aging wine.
Right.
When he talked about this plateau of maturity, which is a stupid thing, he killed the idea to let age wine. And I will tell you when you want.
Oh, don't worry. I think we're going to get there.
Do you understand what I mean? Because for me, it is very important for the one who listen to us.
Right.
You have magnificent years. I will give you the magnificent years. The great mythic years. I don't talk about the young ones. I begin in 89 and 90. Then I go to 61. Then I go to 59 and 61. Then I go to 45, 47. Then I go to 28, 29. Then I go to 1899 and 1900. I could go further, but I'll stay there. Each of them that I have designated, the older they are, the better the wines are. It means one day the 89 and 90 will be good as the 59, 61. One day the 59, 61 will be as good as the 45, 47. One day the 45, 47 will be as good as the 28, 29, and so on. It means that age is a factor of improving the quality of a wine because the complexities never end to expand. And that is a very important point to understand that. So the question, I had always the question, why did the old winemakers work better than the winemaker of today? No, the winemakers of today work well. It is age, it is their skill and age which enlarge. And everybody knows that. For example, for the one of you who drink Sauterne, it is so obvious that an old Sauterne is better than a young Sauterne. So everybody knows that. So someone asked me about 82. 82 is not, for me, not at the level of the greatest year. But it can depend so much on the region, on the because, for example, 82 is nothing in Burgundy, so it cannot be considered as one of the greatest year. So it is very important, the effect of age, and that is why I'm so confident in old wines, and why I never consider a wine as finished.
Right, that's a good point. And it kind of carries me into our next question, which has already partially been answered. I had a question about in your opinion, what the best vintages of Henri Jaillet Cros Parent 2 are. And in your opinion, well, I guess you're going to say it's the older bottles, but in your opinion, who do you think of his disciples, whether that be Rouget or Mio Camazet, are they doing justice to Cros Parent 2 since his passing?
You know, I have an experience on wines, but I'm not so knowing well the Cros Parent 2. I've drank many, but you know, I don't study, is this one better than the other? I drink wine. So I would like to say to all people who listen to me, I have not the knowledge, I have the experience, which is different. And what I like is to drink. You know, for example, I tell you, I've drunk probably 100 years of Yquem, I've drunk probably 80 years of Aubryon, 70 years of Latour, and so on. But I have the experience. I don't spend my time saying this year is better than that. So, for example, Cros Parent 2, the 78 is one of the greatest years of Henri Jaillet, but I have not ranked them per years, and I don't spend my time trying to know if Emmanuel Rouget or if Nicolas Méot. So I will have a lunch. I know why is the question. I will have a lunch with the three Cros Parent 2 of the three Jaillet, Rouget and Méot, but it is not to say this one is better. It is to enjoy them together. You know, I'm not an analyst. I am an hedonist. I want to enjoy them together, not to say this one is better than the other. This is not my interest.
No, that makes complete sense. And so I'm going to take that into probably our last question on modern wines, and it kind of gets back to the Robert Parker effect.
Yeah.
We often look at drinking windows to kind of help manage our expectations when it comes to when a wine becomes accessible and when it becomes past their prime. What's your opinion on drinking windows?
You know, when I read on Instagram, people drinking a Romanée Conti 211, for me, it is like you have a saber and you go in my heart, you know, because people drink wines much too early. And I make a comparison. Allow me a comparison. You know, imagine that the people who sell fruits, they sell fruit. So they have their fruits there, and they put only strawberries green. And every fruit merchant has green strawberries. People would eat green strawberries and they would find qualities in green strawberries because they have never eaten a red strawberry. And in wine, what happens today? Many people drink only green strawberries because they don't know that a wine can be so incredibly better with age. So my suggestion is let age wine. Let age wine. Don't precipitate to check. For example, when I read someone, he wanted to check a 2009. When you know that in 20 years it will be so fantastic, it is a shame to drink a wine which can produce so many qualities with age. And the problem is people have no big cellars, have no space, have no money and it is a big question of the market of wine today due to lack of cellars, lack of money. It is impossible to let wine age. And for me, it is a pity. And you know, the prices have so exploded. I would have liked that the producers invest in their own stock. For example, you have a Vega Sicilia. Vega Sicilia, they deliver only 11 years after the year. Dom Perignon, you have Dom Perignon more than 10 years after it was made. So some do the job, but some don't do the job. You know, one day I was invited in Domaine Dot. It's a rosé. And we drank the young, and the young were undrinkable. And I said, why do you put on the market such wines? And they said to me, if the restaurants have not the wine of the year, we are put away of the list of suppliers.
Yeah, that is becoming more and more common. And it's interesting too, because you see in La Place de Bordeaux or, you know, Bordelais, Chateau in the Cru Classé, some of them are starting to question whether they do futures or not. And I think it might be to go in that direction to kind of.
Yeah, Latour began to do so.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And I think that might be better for their clientele down the road. Okay, sorry, I do have one last question and it will be quick. What is your opinion on Corvins? Using a Corvin for likely not old wine, but have you ever used Corvins for relatively younger wines?
So, you know, I say what I think. I'm sorry if I shock some persons. For me, you know, I'm probably in the world the man who has opened the greatest number of wines. We will talk about my method of opening, because every wine that I drink, even by producers, I open myself, which is curious. Yeah. And, you know, opening is making a discovery. So if then the bottle is open, I am in the same trip as the wine, and we have to cope together. You see what I mean? To do it again 15 days later, has for me no interest.
Right.
It was an unknown wine, and I was excited to open it. 15 days later, to drink the same wine, I will not have the same pleasure because I know it already. So my passion is discovery. And so I have never used Corvins, and I think I will never use. But I can understand, for example, in a restaurant, it is fantastic to have Corvins because you can offer to many people a wine which is kept properly. In a restaurant, okay. But for private consumption, I would not have the same pleasure to do it again. My trip is to make discoveries and discoveries and discoveries.
Awesome. Thank you, Francois. I'm going to pass it over to Warren, but I really appreciate you answering all my questions.
Okay, Francois. Well, first off, a couple of things, Francois. I'm going to always remember I'm not an analyst. I'm a hedonist. I love that. I might have that embroidered on a throw cushion in my home. And I believe that we'll be selling a lot of wine from 1989 and 1990 after hearing your talk about them.
Yeah.
Okay, so a couple of questions here, mostly regarding old wine before we get on to slow oxygenation and wine service. George is a friend and client of mine who collects a lot of very old Sakai and was asking particularly about old Sakai. But what it led to, and I'm interested to hear your opinion on old Sakai, but what it led to was regions outside of France that you may find particularly good for ancient wines as well, whether that's areas of Australia. You know, we got in a 1941 Sonoma the other day. So outside of France, where do you find that wines are aging well in the world?
So, you know, if it concerns old wines, every country making sweet wine is interesting because, you know, south of Spain, Portugal, Madeira, Cyprus, south of Greece, and other the Massandra collection and so on. So everywhere where you have sweet wine, you can buy because it will always be good. So I've collected a lot, and I have a lot of many other countries for all the way. For red and white, you know, there's so much availability in France that, except some exceptions, you know, I take in the treasure of France, you know. So I'm a lover of Vega Sicilia, so I have a collection of Vega Sicilia. I love Barolos, but I have no time enough to, because they're fantastic, the Barolos, but I have no time and not the knowledge, enough knowledge on the years. In France, I know every year, you know, but not exactly in other countries. So I love also in Australia, the Penfold Grange, but it is not an old wine, but it's fantastic. So I think if people want to explore many regions, it is with sweet wine that they can go everywhere. For example, Tokaj in Hungary, it is fantastic. It ages so well, and it is so great.
Thank you. And actually, when we speaking of sweet wine, Larry has said that the vintages of this, and we may consider these, I'm sure you will consider these to be obviously very young, but vintages from the 70s and 80s of Chateau d'Yquem that would be drinkable in the next 10 to 15 years. What Larry has said is, I figure out how much time I have left before my palate completely fades away, he says.
So he asked about which year in the 70s and 80s. So
yeah.
It was for me the great years in the 70s. I would put first 76, which is a great year. And in the 80s, I would say there are so many great, because you have 80 is not great, but is nice. 84 is very nice. The greatest are, of course, 88, 89, 85. But you have more great in the 80s and in the 70s.
Thank you. Let's see, we have you'd mentioned at one point in an interview with Wine Searcher that you believed about, possibly with respect to fraudulent wines, that maybe there was 2% of your cellar that might contain some fraudulent wines. Does that mean that you suspect that of 2 in 100 bottles that you pull, or just generally speaking?
No, I have no figure, no real figure. You know, no, what I do, what is interesting is that I've completely changed my way of buying since the problem of fakes exists. For example, I never buy a relabeled bottle. I said I never buy recorked bottle. I never buy a relabel. I want to feel the age of the bottle. And I prefer, you know, in China, they want perfect labels. I prefer a very ruined label.
I've noticed that from many of your photographs. In fact, go ahead, sorry.
Because it has lived. And, you know, when having the bottle in the end, I can have an idea about its life. So I prefer to buy wounded bottles than perfect bottles.
Nice. I had, Rob has asked, he says your approach to wine appreciation, as is evident, is very different from, you know, what he would consider critics, obviously, and you don't objectify wine with scores and dwell on faults, but rather always seem to find redeeming qualities in the wines you experience. And his question was, how often do you encounter wines that will disappoint you?
Never. I would say never. I will tell you, because it is my philosophy. And for me, it is very important, a very important point. When I make my dinners, people come and I tell them, you don't judge a wine, you try to understand it. And the key word is you try. It means that if you try to understand, that you are humble. If you are humble, you will understand the wine. If you have a preconceived idea, you will not understand the wine. And for me, it is philosophically, you respect the wine and you listen to the message of the wine. And it's why, even with a wounded wine, I listen to what it will say to me. And it is very, very important. And it gives me an occasion to talk about notation.
Thank you. You were also, sorry, go ahead.
Yes. So if you give a notation to a wine, it means that you are the master and that the wine is your pupil. And my philosophy is that the wine is the master and that I am the pupil. So I listen to the master when I drink a wine. And it is very important. So if you have respect to a wine, you will, of course, see more the qualities. You will forget what is bad. And it is a positive view on wine. Take what is the best that gives the wine.
And you mentioned, and you see in your photographs, all the bottles that you've kept and the corks that you've kept. And we spoke about this when we were talking briefly the other day about notes and tasting notes. And I think you and I are of the same ilk in that regard. I don't like impaling tasting notes on things with cherries and tobacco and things of that nature. So could you talk to us a little bit about your thoughts on tasting notes and recording your experiences in that way as opposed to through your memory?
I must tell you one thing. When I make a dinner, for example, I never take notes. I have not a pencil to take notes because I trust in my memory, because my memory will put away what is not interesting or put away what is not important. So it is not important to say if it reminds of vegetable, of that or that or that. It is not important. What is important is the emotion. And so I try to relate my emotion with a wine. That is important. A wine must make you dream. A wine must give you pleasure. And it is this pleasure that I want to tell.
Thank you. That's we're going to move on a little bit to the slow oxygenation and service. Yeah. When I encountered you first, Francois, was through Instagram, and I don't spend much time on Instagram or pay much attention to it, but I did discover your page somehow, and I was reading with such incredible interest about this methodology of slow oxygenation, because I, like I'm sure many people, have been throwing away wine that now I think back on that they may have been good had I employed your methods. So the question that we and a number of other people have is, how did you come to develop that slow oxygenation method? And one person said, why do you prefer it to decanting? But let's talk a little bit about that.
So I realized the method, it was when I was, let's say it is, I was 30 or something like that. For Christmas, as my wife does not drink, I chose a bottle, and it was a Chambertin 29. And I opened it, I drank it, and as I drank only half, I left it for the second day, the day after of Christmas. And at 11 in the morning, I smelled the wine. And I was so amazed. The wine was 10 times better. And I phoned to friends, come quickly, I have a miracle wine. And they drink with me. On the day of Christmas, we drank this Chambertin, which was largely better the day after. And I thought, what happened? And it was the oxygenation. And so I said, there is something that I should study. And I studied how it works. And I give you my method because it is very interesting. You open a bottle. I mean, first I say it concerns mainly bottles of more than 20 years, because if it is a wine of 10, you decant, you don't decant, you do what you want, it has no importance. For a wine which has already an age, you open it 4 to 5 hours before the meal. So if you have a dinner, you open at 4 o'clock. If you have a lunch, you open at 8 or 9 in the morning. You open and you let it stand. You don't pour a glass to check, no, because it would disturb the wine. You let it stand at a proper temperature of storage, and you will only serve the wine when it is time to be served.
So you're slowly oxygenating at a cellar temperature of 15 degrees instead of room?
Cellar temperature for the red, and in the fridge, in the door of the fridge for the white, because it must be vertical, of course, because it is opened. And you don't put a cork on it. The only case in which I put a cork after having opened, in when the perfume is so perfect, so grandissime, then I put a cork to protect the smell, because it is already ready to be enjoyed. And what is incredible in this method is that when you serve the wine will have a quality which will be constant for hours. So many people say the wine declined. It never occurs when you have made the slow oxygenation. The wine will not collapse. It will stand at the same level of quality, perfect quality, all during the meal. That is very important. And so I've studied it, I've ameliorated it, but the more simple you do it, the best it works. And I tell you, it makes miracles. And I say it really because I have a percentage of bottle that I have to throw away, which is incredibly low, less than 2% for bottles of more than 50 years. It is incredible.
That's an incredible percentage. And is that of all fill levels as well? Because I look at some, there was an 82 Bordeaux that I have here that I chose to pull out of our auction because it had a mid-shoulder fill and I didn't want to take that chance. But I mean, is that,
it works for every level. It works for every level. And one advice, if it stinks when you open, believe in it, because it will no more stink. For example, yesterday I opened a Léoville Poiferré 59. It smelled cork. I let it stand. 5 hours later, not single sign of cork.
That's amazing. And you were saying, just so for clarity, the same amount for both white, again, outside of the perfume fact that you mentioned, but the same red for red and white, 4 to 5 hours? And so turn and port, 4 to 5 hours for everything.
All wines. I wanted to make a technique which is not complicated, because you could open 6 hours. Of course, for example, if you open a Côte Rôtie of Gigal, you could open it the day before, or a Vega Sicilia the day before. But generally speaking, 5 hours is good.
And from that point, from 5 hours, then you are simply pouring it into each glass. There's no decanting. There is no
decanting. Nothing. You could decant if you want, but no. I suggest one thing. If you don't decant, of course, with an old wine, the density is lighter at the top than at the bottom. And so if you make a dinner, never serve beginning by the same person, turn around the beginning point in order that there are not people who have always the lighter part and always other people who have the more density. And my advice also, you do what you want, but I drink the dregs.
Do you chew the sediment?
Yes, and it is where the soul of the wine is.
I have a good friend who I hope is on the line now from Vienna, and he's always okay. Who's going to chew the sediment as we get down towards the bottom of that bottle? His wine dinners are always double blind.
Yeah, I have a comic story about that. I'm very friend with Aubert de Villaine, and he also likes to drink the rest at the end of the bottle, and so we fight.
I would to be a fly on the wall in that room. Question though, actually, when it comes to service as well, you were. I'm wondering if you drink from varietal specific glasses, a Bordeaux versus a wider Burgundy glass, or do you change?
No, of course, glass is important, but I must tell you, I have a very nice glasses. Of course, it helps. But I'm so used now that I recognize a wine and its qualities, even if a glass which is not the perfect one. But of course, it is important, specifically for the perfume.
Yes. Yes. Okay. And I think the first time I sent you a comment in Instagram, I was curious why you weren't using a Durand wine opener, because I was using these, always concerned that the cork is going to disintegrate, or sometimes with sweet wines, how it drills a hole into it. So I want you to talk a little bit about how you open these very old wines, and then what you do if the wine doesn't come out perfectly, because I know you answered me very curtly, I do not use a Durand, and because it ruins that cork.
No, I tell you, Durand is a good thing, but I don't use Durand because it hurts the surface of the cork. And as I collect corks, I don't use Durand. I use this. I hope you will see that. To show you that if you see it, yes. I use that, and I begin with a normal corkscrew to lift 5 millimeters in order that the cork does not stick more on the glass, and then I use this big thing.
It's very long, yes.
Very long. I don't know what it is. Okay, you see it. Je sais pas comment on fait.
It looks like it would touch the bottom of the bottle.
Yeah. No. But in order to lift, and if it breaks, I have a second one because the first is already used. I have a second one, and I have also tools like I showed you. This which is you see that. Yes. In order that you can take away small pieces. But I have remarked that even when a cork breaks, all the small pieces continue to be along the glass. They don't fall. They continue to be along the glass. So when you open gently, to give you an idea, to open 10 bottles for a dinner, one of my dinners, I take 1.5 hours to open the 10 bottles. So if I were a sommelier, I would be fired immediately because I take too much time to open the one. But I take care and I go slowly. Every move should be slowly. And in order also to protect the air, which is in the, if you lift slowly, you will not have an explosion of the air. And it's good for the wine recovery.
Thank you. That covered actually more of the questions about opening the course, because there were quite a few questions about the bottles. I'd like to talk about your dinners, Francois. As Megan and I were offline, I had said, one of the things that I've learned that I'm most excited about for this darn plague to end is the chance to be able to come over to Paris and accompany you in one of your wine dinners, which look amazing. So the questions that we had come up were, how frequently you hold them? Can you tell us about them? Can people understand how to budget for it? Like, what would it cost people?
Yeah, okay. So, when my cellar was too big, at one moment I said I cannot open the wines only for my friends. So I must make dinners in order that people enjoy my wines by paying for a dinner. And I created winedinners.com in 2000. And now I've made 248 dinners. So it makes roughly 12 per year.
And 2,800 bottles, I believe, through those, you said, yes?
Pardon me?
I said, and 2,800 bottles over the span of those dinners, 2,800
Yes,
bottles.
yes. So 248 dinners makes 2,800 bottles because it's generally 11 because I add always something. So, and the format of my dinner is 10 people, 10 wines, but I add sometimes. Yeah. Okay. And the format, general format, I say 2 champagne, 2 white wine, with a difference of age in order that there is no nervousness in comparing, 2 Bordeaux, 2 other red from Rhone, Burgundy, other regions, and then 2 liqueurs wine. So it makes the profile. And what is very important, I don't want that there is competition between wines. I will explain why. Imagine in a dinner, I put Haut-Brion 59 and Haut-Brion 61. When it is time for those 2 wines, you will be nervous to know if 61 is better than 59 or 59 better than 61. And it is not what I want. And I will put a Haut-Brion 1918 and a Palmer 89, because there is no fight between the two. What I want, there is no fight. You are there to enjoy wines, not. And at the end of my dinners, people vote, and they vote for the 4 to 5 best in the dinner. But it is not best wines. It is best experience, and it is best pleasure. Because
do you serve them blind?
No, never, because they pay to drink some wine, so they know what they are going to drink.
No, I don't mean double blind. I mean just blind. Like, do they know what they're drinking?
But you know, blind tasting is intellectual. Comparison between wine is intellectual. What I try to make is a gastronomic dinner based on research for pleasure. A wine has to give you pleasure, not being compared, not being in competition. I try to be quiet. A wine is there to please you. You understand what I mean?
Yes, I understand perfectly what you mean. You were mentioning when you talk about making dinners and things, are these typically, these certainly aren't dinners that you make. You hold them in restaurants, no?
Yes.
Yeah, okay, in a restaurant.
So my dinners are made in restaurant, 3 stars, 2 stars, sometimes 1 star of Michelin guide. And I bring my wines 1 week in advance. I come in the restaurant at 4 o'clock before the dinner. They know me. They know that I'm the only one who does so. I open all the bottles. I let them stand, and I wait for my partners to come. Then I'm used to that.
And do people, so if for people to participate in one of your dinners, where would they find an invitation, what you're serving, and how would they budget for that? How would people know?
I will tell you, I did not want to create a club or to create a fee every year if you want to come. If you want to come, you come. You pay, you come. So no, I don't make that to make money. I make that in order that my words are. So I have a website which is wine/dinners.com.
We'll send it out to everyone.
Yeah, and on that site, you have all the dinners that I have made. On a page, you have the 248 dinners. You click on one, you have all the wines, and you have the menu. And you have the place where so you can be the enormous variety of wines that I have made. And I've the chance to make dinners in very specific places. I'm the only one who is authorized to make dinners in Château d'Yquem. I've made 6 dinners in Château d'Yquem.
Wow.
I've made 4 dinners in Château de Saran, the castle of Mouette NC. I've made dinner in Veuve Clicquot Hotel. So I made in places with my wines. It's always with my wines. And to make it funny, because we have a little time, when I'm invited to drink very old wine of the properties of a winemaker, I open the wine myself. But I do it, and they are happy. I tell you one thing. I went one day in Bonneau du Martret, and we drank their Corton Charlemagne up to 1935. And I opened all the wines. And at the end of the meal, the Madame de la Morinière, who is the wife of the Jean-Charles who owned Bonneau du Martret, told me, Mr. Audouze, you come back whenever you want because I've never drunk so nice wines of my property.
Oh, that's so great. So terrific. Well, I've exhausted the questions I have, and I've promised to keep us into into 1 hour, but we could sit and talk to you for many hours, but I'm going to save the rest of that for when we get to meet face to face, which I'm very, very much looking forward to.
Please. So some people ask me about the price.
Okay.
Okay. It begins at 1,500 euro per person, but it is already a very nice dinner. The average should be in the 2,500 up to 3,000, but with very nice wines because the average age is more than 50. When there is a wine of Romanée-Conti, it is in the range of 4,000. And when it is extreme, there is no limit. I have a dinner with nine Romanée-Conti. The price is incredible. It begins by 899 Romanée-Conti.
Oh my God, that would be incredible. Megan, don't get your hopes up because that's not something we're going to be going to. Well, Francois, I've mentioned I think I've been on many webinars and I've been on many Zoom calls, and in all my time, I've always watched participants drop off. This is the only webinar I've been to where I haven't seen participants drop off until the end, which is a testament to your charm, your knowledge, and we so much appreciate everything that you've said and shared with us. And we can only look forward to, as I said, meeting you in person. As I mentioned to everyone at the beginning of this call, this has been recorded. We will be sending it to everyone. They are welcome to share it as they feel, to anybody they like. It will also be permanently sitting on our site under our Behind Fine Wine podcast series. And I want to thank you so much for giving us an hour of your time tonight. I've never enjoyed an hour with someone as much as this.
Thank you very much. And I was very pleased to talk with you. Thank you.
Thank you
to all participants.
Thank you very, very much. Terrific. Thank you, Francois.
Bye.
Good day. And thank you, everybody, for attending. Have a great rest of your weekend.